It feels like recently a lot of paddle companies have been coming out with their all-court version of their very popular power paddle. And Selkirk has definitely done that with their boomstick with the Selkirk Omni. And I think it's the best rendition of an all-court paddle coming from a power paddle. Hey there guys, welcome back to the Dink Drive. And if it's your first time tuning into this segment, I do paddle reviews where I play with a paddle for at least 10 hours to give you full insight to how it plays, if there's anything weird that develops over time, if you need an adjustment period, at least for me, just to see how that paddle plays out over an extended period. And today we have the Selkirk Omni, and I think the Selkirk Omni is definitely one of the more interesting all-court paddles to come out recently. There's been a lot of very good all-court paddles to come out, but Selkirk did the power paddle probably one of the best in 2025. So in 2026, they've got to do the all-court version one of the best. And so in today's video, I'm gonna talk about the three main changes that have differentiated itself from the Selkirk boomstick, as well as the play of the Selkirk Omni. And then lastly, I'm gonna talk about who I think the Selkirk Omni is for, and probably give you a few paddles that are similar enough to the Omni that might work out a little better for you depending on how you play. So there's three main changes that differentiate the boomstick from the Omni. And the first one I wanna talk about is the price. The Omni comes in at $300 versus the boomstick at $333. It's not a big change, but it is good to see the price is coming down. Hopefully it's because of economies of scale. So as more of these are being made and Selkirk has figured out how to build these paddles, they have found efficiencies to make these a little cheaper. Hopefully future iterations, maybe they can come down a little more, who knows? But it is good to see that the price did come down a little bit. Second of all, the tuning weights on the side, they are now adjustable, so you can really customize this paddle. One of the main complaints I had with the boomstick is that the weights are not exactly where I want them or not as distributed as I would like. And so now it gives you the option of taking off the weights and adding your own weights, or just moving these MOI tuning weights around, though I see most people will play with this stock. And lastly, the final change the Omni has versus the boomstick is the core. The core is just slightly different, even though they use the same materials, they are tuned differently. This is not tuned as much for pop and power, whereas the boomstick is tuned for pop and power. When you hit with this Omni on a full swing, you will know that you are kind of capping out at a certain power level. You're not really going to be hitting as fast than with a boomstick. All right, but how does that translate to play? So for backcourt play, let's talk about power shots like drives, serves, and anything from that backcourt area. You're going to notice it is more free to swing with the Omni. The Omni does feel like it is a little bit better if you are better at controlling how much power output you need. It doesn't have the immediate pop like the boomstick, but it has a more connected feel. It kind of feels like you are getting the ball's response a little quicker from the Omni versus the boomstick. The boomstick is a little bit more hollow and the Omni is a little bit more dense. It feels more immediate. And that gives you better tell on how that ball is going to go versus the boomstick. The boomstick can at times feel like it's launching the ball from the backcourt a little bit. If you overswing, it's definitely going out. Versus the Omni, you can really swing quite hard and it will probably stay in. Now, for people that might not be able to generate their own power effectively, it might not work as well. You might notice that those drives that you normally get with something like a boomstick going real fast, it's not going to be performing like that. You will still get a lot of spin and all of the good stuff that you got from your boomstick. You're just not getting that like speed that might be applying pressure to your opponents that you normally are accustomed to. Now, coming up to the mid-court where you're hitting more drops and resets, The Omni is much more superior on that front to the boomstick. It is much easier to decelerate the ball with the Omni. It does feel like you get a much more connected feel to the ball, like I said, because of that denseness, and it just makes it much easier to hit drops and resets, especially resets, because the boomstick does feel at times is really adding a lot of pop to the ball, even if you're trying to decelerate it. So you have to add a lot of touch on the boomstick, whereas with the Omni, a slight adjustment will get you the results that you need. Especially with this Omni, if you take off the weights, all of those control shots like drops and resets become super easy, but you do not have a lot of power when you take off these MOI tuning weights for drops and resets. So I think for that type of play, most people are not going to enjoy it without the weights. Yeah. We'll just keep talking about it stock, because honestly, without the weights, it's just a weird kind of soft paddle. All right, and lastly, let's come up to the front court where we're hitting dinks, putaways, a lot of shots like that. The Omni feels pretty good. I would say, because I've played with the boomstick a little bit longer than the Omni, it feels like I hit better dinks and putaways with the boomstick, just because I think I've played with it longer. I think over time, the Omni will be easier to hit dinks with, but the putaways with the boomstick feel way better because they're just so much faster. And you don't need to put a lot of swing into it at all. For hands battles, I still prefer the Omni because at times you do want to slow down the ball, and the boomstick is not so good at slowing down the ball. The Omni is very, very good at slowing down the ball in those hands battles when you really need to kind of get back to neutral. Where I really think the boomstick shines is when you're at the net, you barely have to swing or put a backswing, and you can get a lot of speed to put away points. Whereas the Omni, even if you put a backswing through it, it might not be able to put away points like the boomstick. So there's two distinct players here, the Selkirk boomstick and the Selkirk Omni. I think for players that can't generate their own power reliably, or even if they can and they want a ball that can stay in, be very comfortable to play with at the midcourt, at the backcourt, pretty much throughout the court, this all-court battle, like its name, is much easier to play throughout the range of the court. The Selkirk boomstick, great for singles, great if you can keep that ball in while swinging hard, whereas the Omni, you can swing as hard as you want, and most of the time the ball is going to stay in. So it is two distinct players here. I think if you are a strong tennis background, have great swings, have good technique, the boomstick will still probably edge out the Omni for you. Where the Omni really makes sense is if you're a very good doubles player and you want it to be as dependable as possible. I think the Omni actually stands out a little better than the boomstick. Now, there are other options out on the market that are similar to the Omni in a way, like the Luz Inferno Frozen. The Luz Inferno Frozen, I think, has a very similar feel to the Omni, though I actually think that has a little less power than the Omni. Even though they have a very similar feel profile, I think the Omni just has just a little bit more, so you can get a little bit more pressure from the backcourt and midcourt. I also think that the Omni is just a touch more intuitive to play than the Luz Inferno Frozen. Both are very good. Of course, the Omni is $300 versus the Frozen at, I think, $205. There's also the Warping Point Sophon, which is the least expensive out of all of these. And that actually has the highest power potential, so you can swing very freely with that paddle and get much more speed than the Frozen and the Omni. But I will say there are some dead spots on that paddle where it might be a little bit unforgiving versus the Frozen and Omni, where it feels like the sweet spot is very big and you don't have to worry about it at all. So three very similar paddles, three very different price points. They all work, but I think the Omni is the best package out of all of them. It feels the most comfortable and has a very good power output. If you do want to check out the Omni, Selkirk did give me a code, INF-PBWILLY. It is an affiliate code, so you will be helping out this channel. Selkirk did send me this Omni for a review, but they didn't require me to provide anything besides my opinion. So you will just be helping out the channel by using the code. They didn't pay me for this review. They didn't send me this move stick. I bought it out way back in the day. And so if you do want to support the channel, please use that code. All right, thank you guys. If you did enjoy this video, please comment down below if you would check out the Omni, maybe the Luz Inferno Frozen or the Warping Point Sophon. Or you think maybe all court paddles are just maybe a fad right now. Anyways, thanks for watching. Like and subscribe. Peace.